My name is Cassia Wren Whitlow, 36 years old. Urban planning is a love letter to consequences. One small change, 10 blocks later, everything bends. Most days, I prefer the certainty of maps and bylaws to the messy improvisation of people. People redraw themselves without notice. It started with rain, the thin, metallic kind that skates along the street like a rumor. Evan came through the door buoyant, drops glittering on his coat sleeve, lips brushing my cheek the way someone taps a stranger on the shoulder to pass. "Babe, massive news," he said, already reaching for the bottle of Albarino. "Alessa's taking me to the Coastal Developer Summit. Just me and her. If we land this high-rise, it's everything." "Just you and her?" It slipped out before I could stand it. He laughed too loud. "Don't be like that, Cass. It's work." I swallowed the reflexive apology and poured tea instead. In 7 years together, 2 living under the same roof, I learned the choreography. I am steady. He is momentum. I am blueprints and traffic studies. He is renderings and ribbon cuttings. Alessandra Vale, his boss, is older, sharper, a name that opens doors. People call her Alessa like it's a password. He left early the next morning, humming, suitcase half zipped. I went to make toast and tapped our family tablet to check the weather. A banner slid across the lock screen with the casual cruelty of automation. "Serenity Spa and Resort. Your booking confirmation." My job rewired me to notice micro changes. A curb height, a crosswalk timing, how a phone that used to live face up learned shame. I didn't feel my pulse spike. I felt it stop, like a light turned off. His personal email was still logged in. Tap. Subject line opened like a trapdoor. "Dear Evan Pierce, we're thrilled to confirm your reservation for our couples retreat package. 90-minute aromatherapy, deep tissue, private grotto soak, champagne, and strawberries. Guests, Evan Pierce and Alessandra Vale. Check-in. Thursday." I scrolled to the footer, a link to enhance your romantic stay. The date punched my ribs. Thursday. I opened a new tab and typed Roman Vale, Alessa's husband, before I could talk myself out of it. His name is printed under charity boards like wallpaper. His Instagram is curated philanthropy and small, expensive dogs. One post, exactly a year back. "Happy 20th anniversary to my favorite co-conspirator. He's whisking me away. Can't wait for 21. The couples retreat this Thursday. Their 21st anniversary. A problem, my brain offered, with variables and a solution set. The shower cut off. Evan's voice came from the bedroom. "Hey, can you iron my silk shirt? The navy? Summit dinner." "Sure," I said, my voice so even it felt rented. While the iron warmed, I forwarded the spa email to my account. Then I found Roman's direct line on a charity board page and his assistant's address beside it. I attached the confirmation and wrote, "Subject, Happy Anniversary Roman, Cassia." Here, Evan's partner. "I believe our partners are collaborating on a special project for your anniversary. Attaching a confirmation for this Thursday. Warmly, Cassia." I hit send. Evan padded into the kitchen, hair damp, smelling like bergamot and justification. I texted him while he stood 20 feet away. "Trip sounds intense. Work hard. XO." He glanced at his phone and smiled. "Thanks, babe. You're the best." At 9:30 a.m., I called the most ruthless family attorney in the city, the one who undid a colleague's nightmare marriage like a magic trick with affidavits. "Emergency consult," I said. "I need to protect housing and assets. My boyfriend is having an affair with his boss, and I just sent the proof to her husband." There was a pause on the line, then the voice turned surgical. "Can you be here by 11, Ms. Whitlow?" At 10:02, an unknown number flashed. I let it ring. At 10:04, my phone lit with Evan. I answered, put it on speaker, and braced. It wasn't Evan's voice I heard first. It was screaming, a woman's voice, operatic with precision and rage. "On our anniversary? In my city? You think I don't know every board member at Serenity, you little—" The words dissolved into static and heat. "Cassia, what did you do?" Evan's voice was high, pitched thinner than I'd ever heard it. "What did you send?" "Hi, Evan," I said, picking up my keys. "Sounds busy." "Roman is here, and Alessa is—" "Cass, what did you do?" "I just wished Roman a happy anniversary," I said, "and forwarded him your spa itinerary." A gasp, small and ugly. Somewhere behind him the screaming sharpened. I caught, "Get him out of my building," and the thump of a door. You You spied on me, he said, latching onto the one word that might make me the villain of his story. Your confirmation popped up on the shared tablet, I said. You booked an anniversary retreat with another woman's husband. I just pressed forward. Cass, please, you have to fix this. Call him. Say it's team building. Say it's a... He gulped air, searching for a euphemism large enough to hold a couple's massage. I'm going to get fired. That sounds like a natural consequence, I said. You've ruined my life, he snapped, voice snapping back to its more familiar register. Injured lord of the manor. No, I said, stepping into the hallway, rain licking the building's glass like a tongue. You did. I just sent the receipts. Goodbye. I hung up. The quiet on the elevator ride down was almost religious. At 11:00, I sat across from a woman in a navy suit with a pen that clicked like a metronome. I slid the tablet across her desk, the email open like a wound. We built a plan. Freeze discretionary joint access. Document everything. Move heirlooms. My grandfather's original plats for the River District. Off-site. Contain first, she said. Then act. People in panic set themselves on fire. Step back and let the flames choose. My phone buzzed face down on her walnut desk, vibrating 3 times, then 4, then steady as a drill. I didn't flip it over. There's power in saving your glance for later. By mid-afternoon, the rumor mill had started to hum. A colleague texted, Is it true? Roman showed up at Vale Development. Another wrote, Heard yelling through 3 floors. You okay? I kept my replies clipped. I'm handling it. Truth, like water, finds its own level. At home that evening, the rain finally softened. I made pasta and didn't eat it. The air in the apartment felt rearranged, like the furniture had moved of its own accord. On my office wall, the plats, my grandfather's careful hand tracing a river no one respects, looked like a map of the last 6 hours. A channel diverted, a floodplain corrected. At 7:11, Evan tried again from a different number. I let it ring to voicemail. His voice was shredded. Cass, please, just talk to me. Alessa says it wasn't what it looks like. She says we can... Roman's freezing accounts. They escorted her out. If you love me, you'll... I deleted it. Not out of meanness, but maintenance. My job is to keep what works and remove what doesn't. One email had aligned the system. Everything after that was gravity. At 9:23, a message slipped in from a name I didn't recognize. Celine, Alessa's assistant. For what it's worth, you did the right thing. Then a second message. He did this with his ex, too, years ago. Different office, same play. I stared at those lines until my eyes blurred. The ex-girlfriend, the one Angela, Evan's mother, had once praised for understanding the culture. Patterns are just people who refuse to change shape. I washed the pasta pod I never used, turned off the kitchen light, and stood in the dark long enough to hear the storm unclench its jaw. In the bedroom, I put the tablet in the top drawer, next to the velvet ring box I never asked for and never opened. I set an alarm for the morning and pulled the covers over a body that had done hard work, noticing, deciding, acting once. Just before sleep, a thought arrived with the clarity of a train schedule. Tomorrow, the fallout begins. Tonight, I rest. The system finally was in motion. 2 weeks later, fallout had replaced the weather. The rain was gone, but the air still felt damp with aftershocks. The business trip never happened. The coastal summit carried on without Evan and his boss, because neither of them worked there anymore. Officially, their departures were described as organizational restructuring. Unofficially, everyone knew that Roman Vale, the husband with the socialite Rolodex, and the temperament of a quiet thunderstorm, had moved faster than corporate HR ever could. Alessa's accounts were frozen. Evan's key card stopped working before lunch that same day. She was escorted out by security, stilettos clacking on marble. He was told to clear his desk and surrender his laptop. 2 careers ended in a single morning. I didn't celebrate, I documented. Because in the world I know, a crisis rarely ends cleanly. It mutates. Evan's mutation came in the form of entitlement. When I returned to the house that weekend with my lawyer, Mr. Graves, he was still there, sitting cross-legged on the sofa, surrounded by empty coffee cups and the kind of silence that dares you to break it. He looked up when I walked in, eyes bloodshot, voice quiet. You really did it. I didn't do anything, I said. I just pressed send. He gestured around the room. You cost me everything, Cassia. My job, my reputation. Alessa's destroyed. Actions have consequences, I replied evenly. You just met yours. But he wasn't angry in that moment, just calculating. I should have recognized it. Evan never stayed angry long. He weaponized pity instead. He stood and smoothed his shirt. Well, at least I still have this place. My place, I corrected. He smiled faintly, the kind that means you're about to hear something rehearsed. Actually, not entirely. You forget, I paid for the kitchen remodel and the bathroom upstairs, $120,000, remember? My inheritance. That gives me equity. I turned to Graves, who gave a slow, almost imperceptible nod. He was right. In our state, inheritance used for property improvement can create an equitable claim. Evan crossed his arms. So, I'm not going anywhere, not until I get my half. That's not how this works, Graves said, stepping forward. You're not on the deed. Ms. Whitlow purchased this property 5 years before your relationship began. Any remodels you funded will be considered during division of assets, but you have no right of occupancy. Evan smiled again, that cold, practiced grin. We'll let a judge decide that. The smell of stale coffee filled the silence that followed. That's when I knew this wasn't going to be quick. It wasn't going to be clean. It was going to be war. By the end of the week, Evan had dug in like a tenant who forgot he was temporary. He moved into the guest room, stocked the fridge with his groceries, and began treating the house like shared territory. He accidentally left the stove on twice. He played music at 2 a.m., old pop songs from when we first met, loud enough that the bass line crawled through the floorboards. He ignored every boundary except the one that required direct eye contact. Graves filed for an emergency order of exclusive occupancy, citing creation of a hostile living environment. The hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. In the meantime, I treated the situation like a construction site, unsafe but manageable if you knew where not to step. I avoided the kitchen after dark. I locked my office every night, and I started sleeping with my phone on the nightstand, camera app open, just in case. One night, around midnight, I heard a faint humming from the hallway, Evan singing under his breath. When I opened my door, he was standing at the end of the hall, staring at one of the framed blueprints on the wall. My grandfather's original River District plats. These are nice, he said softly. Never understood why you love this stuff so much. Lines and rules. Kind of boring, don't you think? They're history, I said. He smiled without looking away from the frame. History's meant to be rewritten. The next morning, I took them down and moved them to a safe deposit box. The following week, his mother Fiona called me 12 times in one day. When I finally picked up, her voice trembled with fury, disguised as civility. Cassia, what have you done to my son? Good evening, Fiona. You're destroying him. You know how persuasive women like Alessa are. Evan was trapped. She manipulated him, used him. He booked a couple's massage on her wedding anniversary, I said flatly. Fiona didn't miss a beat. He made a mistake. People make mistakes. You, of all people, should know how cold and lonely your world must be, always measuring everything by rules and consequences. That's how bridges stay standing, I said. She made a small, incredulous noise. You are a cold, cold woman. Then she hung up. Good. I preferred it that way. The hearing came and went, and as Graves predicted, the ruling was a disappointment. The judge, an older woman who looked like she'd seen every variation of marital disaster, sighed through most of the proceedings. Mr. Pierce, she said finally, you have a demonstrable financial investment in this property. Until a final decree determines otherwise, you may remain in the residence's guest quarters. Ms. Whitlow retains use of the primary suite. Evan smirked. I stayed still. When the gavel dropped, I could feel him winning something intangible. Time, leverage, control. He turned to me as we left the courthouse and whispered, Guess we're roommates now. The weeks that followed blurred into a slow-motion siege. He filled the house with tension. Open cabinet doors, half-eaten food, passive-aggressive notes about utilities he still contributed to. One afternoon, I came home to find him lounging in the living room, TV on low. He looked over his shoulder and said, Funny thing about this place, feels smaller when I'm in it, doesn't it? I didn't answer. I just walked past him, locked myself in the office, and added another line to the growing log Graves had asked me to keep. Tuesday, 6:14 p.m. Evan turned off security alarm, claimed he forgot code. Wednesday, 1:10 a.m., music again, volume 80%. Thursday, 11:33 p.m. Stove burner left on low, possible negligence. It was evidence, but it was also survival. Keeping a record made me feel like I still existed in some version of order. Then one morning, I caught him in the office again. He was standing near my flat file drawers, the ones where I kept old project plans, flipping through pages he didn't understand. "Looking for something?" I asked. He didn't flinch. "Just curious. You keep so many secrets in here." "Those are city projects," I said, "confidential." He smirked. "You really think I'd steal blueprints? I'm not that stupid." I closed the door between us, slowly. "That's the thing, Evan," I said. "You think stupidity and cruelty are mutually exclusive." That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house sounded like intent. Every silence felt rehearsed. So I made another plan, the kind of plan that people like Evan never see coming because it doesn't rely on anger. It relies on evidence. I installed a motion-activated camera in the office, a small, unassuming black lens nestled in a corner shelf. If he was going to escalate, I'd have proof. Graves once told me, "People like him always go too far. Your job is just to be watching when they do." And I intended to. Because Evan thought the house was his leverage. He didn't realize the house was my terrain. And every map, especially one drawn by a planner, ends with boundaries. It happened on a Tuesday. Not with a fight, not with shouting, just with absence. I came home from a meeting and went straight to my office, the one room in the house that still felt like mine. The lock clicked open. My gut knew before my eyes did. The drawers of the flat file were empty. Every portfolio, every rendering, every set of city plans I'd worked on for a decade, gone. For a moment, all I heard was the air conditioner, then a pulse, sharp and hot, behind my eyes. The first thought wasn't rage. It was data. I turned on my laptop, opened the security app for the motion-activated camera I'd installed 3 weeks earlier. The feed loaded. There he was. Evan! Not in a rage, not even sneaky, calm, deliberate, wearing one of his tailored suits, the one he'd bought to look respectable in court. He opened the file drawers one by one, stacked the portfolios on the table, and carried them to the garage. Then he came back for more. 10 minutes of footage, precise as a blueprint. He looked straight into the lens once, almost as if he knew, almost as if he wanted me to see. My hand shook when I called Graves. "He took them," I said. "All of it, my entire career." "Do you have proof?" "Yes." "Send it to me right now, and Cassia, do not confront him." His voice had that controlled tone lawyers get when something good just fell into their lap. I emailed him the video. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. "We're filing an emergency motion first thing in the morning. Theft of professional property, violation of restraining order. Don't say a word to him. Let me do the talking." The next 48 hours moved like a machine. Graves filed the motion with the judge who denied my exclusive occupancy weeks earlier. He called it bad faith compounded by criminal contempt. The hearing was scheduled within 2 days. When I arrived at the courthouse, Evan was already there with his lawyer, leaning back in his chair like a man who thought the worst was behind him. He glanced at me once, smirked, and mouthed, "You can't prove anything." Graves stood and handed the clerk a flash drive. "Your Honor," he said, "we can." The judge sighed, the same woman who'd seemed weary of us last time. "This is an unscheduled motion, Mr. Graves. I hope you have a very good reason for dragging everyone back here." "I do, Your Honor." He nodded to the clerk, who plugged in the flash drive and pressed play. On the courtroom monitor, the footage began. There was Evan, sliding open the drawers, methodical and calm, lifting the portfolios, stacking them, loading them into his car, the timestamp clear in the corner, amp. The room went so quiet I could hear the whir of the monitor fan. The judge took off her glasses. "Mr. Pierce," she said slowly, "is this you?" Evan's lawyer leaned toward him, whispering fast. Evan's face blanched. I was just moving them for safekeeping," he stammered. "Cassia said she was worried about break-ins. I didn't steal them." The judge's voice dropped to a deadly quiet. "Safekeeping, in your car." "I wasn't—" She cut him off. "Mr. Pierce, you came into this courtroom 2 weeks ago claiming to be the victim, claiming you needed protection from being thrown out of your home. And then you stole your partner's professional property. You lied to my face." "I didn't lie," he said weakly. "Oh, you did," she snapped. "You lied by omission. You lied by action. You lied by treating this court as if it were stupid." His lawyer's head sank into his hands. "Miss Whitlow," the judge said, turning toward me, "you may reclaim your portfolios today." Then to Graves, "Counsel, your motion for exclusive occupancy?" "Renewed, Your Honor," Graves said. and we request sanctions for theft of professional property. Granted, she said, gavel cracking like thunder, effective immediately. Mr. Pierce, you will vacate the premises by 5 p.m. today. You are to be escorted by a sheriff's deputy to retrieve your personal belongings, clothing only, and to return the stolen property. Furthermore, you are fined $10,000 for contempt of court. Any further violation, I will not hesitate to impose jail time. Do I make myself clear? Evan's lips parted, but no sound came. The judge leaned forward. I am not finished. Your request for spousal support is denied. Permanently. You have demonstrated bad faith so egregious it poisons your entire case. I felt my chest tighten, not in relief, but in disbelief. This was justice delivered without ceremony. Quick, merciless, clean. Evan sat there, pale, sweating, the smirk gone. Sheriff will accompany you, the judge said. You have 4 hours. Outside the courthouse, the sun was merciless. I stood by Graves's car as he slid his sunglasses on. Congratulations, he said. That was the best footage I've seen in 15 years. Was it always going to end this way? I asked. Eventually, he said. Men like him don't stop until they overplay their hand. He just did it faster than most. At the house, 2 deputies stood by while Evan gathered his things. He didn't speak. Not to me, not to them. When he opened the garage, I saw the portfolios neatly stacked in the corner, untouched. He hesitated, looking at them as if they might offer an explanation on his behalf. Take your clothes, one of the deputies said, voice low. He nodded, muttered something that sounded like a curse, and left without looking back. The front door shut. The sound was small, final. That night, the house felt strange, quiet, but not empty. I sat on the floor of my office, surrounded by my recovered work. The papers smelled faintly of dust and cedar. I ran my fingers along the edges, the inked lines, the precision of my own handwriting. It struck me that this wasn't about the portfolios at all. It was about control. He'd tried to take the one thing I built entirely on my own, the thing that proved I could survive without him. He'd underestimated what evidence could do in the hands of someone patient enough to wait. When Graves called the next morning, his tone was half amused, half proud. You know, Cassia, it's not often the judge reverses herself mid-case. That video was the perfect storm. What happens now? I asked. Now, he said, we settle the numbers. He'll get what he's legally owed for the renovations, minus the fines and my fees. I'll make sure he feels every penny of it. I looked around the office, sunlight cutting through the blinds. And me? You rebuild, he said, which from what I've seen is what you do best. By evening, I rehung my grandfather's plaques on the wall. The glass caught the sunset just right, the lines glowing gold. Outside, the street was quiet. No more late-night music. No more tension humming through the drywall. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the pulse of a house returning to itself. For the first time in months, I slept through the night. When I dreamed, I saw a map unrolling across a table. Boundaries redrawn, rivers redirected, structures rebuilt. And in the corner of that map, in small, deliberate letters, I wrote the only word that mattered. It took another 6 weeks to finalize everything. 6 weeks of paperwork, signatures, and quiet mornings that felt like rehabilitation. Evan didn't appeal the judge's ruling. He couldn't afford to. The $10,000 contempt fine, plus the full reimbursement of my legal fees, over $35,000, were deducted directly from his share of the equity. The $120,000 remodel he had once bragged about turned into a net payout of $75,000. Not enough to rebuild the life he'd torched, but just enough to remind him he'd lost something measurable. I never saw him again after that day, but I did hear about him. Fiona, his mother, called Graves's office twice, once to beg, once to threaten. She claimed her son was emotionally destroyed and that I had manipulated the courts. Graves didn't even bother forwarding the messages. He's staying with her now, Graves told me, almost apologetic. The mother, not the boss. Let them share the house, I said. They've both been living rent-free for years. He laughed softly. You're going to be fine, Cassia. I already was. The day the divorce decree arrived, it came with a courier envelope heavy enough to feel important. I sat at the kitchen counter, coffee cooling beside me, and read it word for word. Final judgment. Exclusive occupancy granted permanently to Ms. Whitlow. Spousal support denied. Contempt fine confirmed. Legal fees reimbursed from respondent's equity share. Remaining balance to be disbursed via cashier's check. Case closed. I signed my name at the bottom and exhaled. That was it. No fireworks, no victory song, just closure written in legal font. I thought I'd feel elation, but what I felt instead was something smaller, steadier, peace, the kind that hums in the background of an empty house. By April, spring was blooming in slow motion. The neighborhood trees had new leaves. The house no longer felt haunted, it just felt still. I rehung my grandfather's original River District plats on the office wall, the same ones Evan once called boring. The sunlight caught the lines, tracing the careful geometry of a man who understood structure. Below them, my portfolios sat stacked in perfect order. The top one still had the faint crease from his hand, the only scar he'd left that mattered. Every now and then, I caught myself expecting his music through the wall or his cologne lingering in the hallway. But ghosts fade when you stop feeding them. And one morning I realized the house wasn't quiet because he was gone. It was quiet because I wasn't afraid anymore. Word about Alessa and Roman Vale made its way through the industry grapevine soon after. Roman divorced her in record time. She lost her company seat, her socialite board memberships, and most of her inheritance and settlements. Rumor had it she'd left the country, trading skyscrapers for anonymity. Evan, meanwhile, couldn't find work in the city. His reputation had become a cautionary tale whispered over corporate lunches. Don't pull a Pierce, they said. He tried to launch a consulting firm. 2 months, one website, 0 clients. Then Fiona's money dried up, and he moved to her guest room permanently. I didn't celebrate his downfall. I just let it happen in peace. Consequences didn't need applause. The house and I learned each other's rhythms again. I worked late, cooked simple dinners, filled the silence with the low hum of old jazz. On weekends, I'd take long walks by the river, watching the city I once helped design change itself in small ways. A park where there used to be a parking lot, a new bridge where the old one had rusted away. That's the thing about systems. They correct themselves if you stop interfering. One night, as I locked up my office, I looked at the framed plats again. My grandfather had once written in the margin of one drawing, "Rivers will always return to their course, so will people." I ran my fingers over the words. The ink faded, but firm. He'd been right. I'd spent months trying to hold a relationship that had already changed direction. When it finally broke, everything returned to where it was meant to go. 2 months later, I received an email from Roman Vale. "Cassia, you don't know me, but you saved me time. I didn't know I was losing. Thank you for telling the truth when no one else would. If you ever need a recommendation in the industry, my door's open. Roman." I stared at it for a long time, then replied simply, "You're welcome. I hope the city treats you kindly." Life went on, slowly, beautifully. I joined a private firm, took on new projects, started mentoring young planners. I bought a small dog who insisted on sleeping under my drafting table. The house finally felt alive again, filled with small, ordinary sounds, the kind you don't notice until they're gone. One evening, as the sun slipped behind the skyline, I sat by the window with a glass of wine and watched the light reflect off the water. The same river my grandfather had mapped 70 years earlier still followed its course, no matter how many bridges people tried to build over it. I thought about everything that had happened, the lies, the hearings, the video, the judge's voice like thunder, and realized I wasn't angry anymore. Not at Evan, not at Alessa, not even at myself for loving him longer than I should have. All I felt was gratitude. For the lesson, for the quiet, for the proof that boundaries hold when you draw them right. When I went to bed that night, I left the window open. The city was breathing again, and so was I. I didn't destroy him. I didn't need to. The truth had done that all on its own. I just sent one email, and the system, my system, did what it was always built to do. It corrected itself.